Here we are in Bentonville, Arkansas, about 200 miles as the crow flies from Little Rock. For a long time, this was the home of Sam Walton. You'll recognize his name as the founder of Walmart. However, this collection is one that a lot of people have never seen before, so we feel privileged to be here. All coming to Mecum Kissimmee in January of 2026. So stand by as we present to you a 60-vehicle collection selling at no reserve. It's the Jack Shewmaker Collection. Here's our starting lineup. It's Chris Jacobs, Rutledge Wood. This is Dan Shewmaker, the custodian of this fabulous collection, and I am Bill Stevens.
So, Dan, when we look around and see so much style, so much color, what's really the theme of this collection?
When my father, Jack Shewmaker, started putting this all together, it started in the 50s era because my grandfather had a Chrysler Dodge Plymouth dealership up in a little town in Missouri. And so he was collecting the cars that he grew up with and knew, but as time went on, he wanted to showcase American cars and a broader spectrum. And so he started collecting all the years that he didn't have. The number of cars that we collected is a big part of what it showcased. And you're going to see a little bit of everything here spanning a lot of decades.
Well, Dan, much like Chevrolet named the Bel Air after an upscale Southern California community, Pontiac swam out into the Pacific about 26 miles and called this car the Catalina after Catalina Island. Why is this car in the collection?
The 61 was, just kind of pre-muscle car before the 409 kind of started coming in. But you look at this and you see the 8-lug wheels. And that was a selling point for this car. Hey, it's got a lot of power. We have to bolt that thing on tight. And it just stood out. I will add one thing. My dad liked to wear black T-shirts and black. And when you put a car that was black in front of him with a little bit of silver and blue, he was all over it.
We are standing in front of a fantastic 1941 Cadillac Series 61. This car's pretty special for several reasons. First of all, General Motors switching over to wartime production by now, so a lot of their cars were built on their sister car assembly lines, such as this one built on a Chevy assembly line. These cars were very distinctive in styling, but Dan, during the war years, these cars went out of production and we didn't see a whole new car from General Motors until around 1946. What's the backstory on this car with your dad?
Well, the unique feature of the fact that it was pre-war and Chevy and Cadillac combined their efforts to build this makes it kind of rare. He liked the color, but it also filled a void there because this would have been the luxury car of the day. And we've been focusing on Chryslers and Dodge, and there was a lot of Chevys and Fords, but now he's starting to see there's more to our car world in the United States, and the Cadillacs have a big role in that. And so body style, color, and rarity, he really liked it.
And obviously, he had a real vision for what he was trying to create, but I wonder, out of all of these cars, did he ever have one that he told you was his absolute favorite?
No, he really didn't, and I think that's what drove him to keep collecting cars, is he was always looking for that one. We forced him into maybe a top 10 sometimes, and it changed every time you asked him. So that's the best answer I can give you.
The true car guy. I love that. What a beautiful thing.
Well, in 1958, General Motors was celebrating 50 years in business, and to do so, they introduced anniversary models for each one of the brands. For Chevrolet, it was this 1958 Bel Air Impala, and Bill, once again, under the creative direction of Harley Earl.
Yeah, that was the last year Harley Earl was the head of design at General Motors, and he went out with a bang. This car pretty much began the chromalicious period for General Motors, where all of the cars coming from the General seemed to have an abundance of chrome everywhere. We call this car a triple-double. Double fender mirrors, double spotlights, and double radio antennas. Plus, this car introduced the X-frame. Why is that important? Because in 1958, General Motors came in with a big block engine in the Chevrolets, the 348, which became the 409. So a very important transitional car. And Dan, a car your dad drove.
That's right. We had so many cars, we had to kind of pick and choose which ones he could take out and drive so we could keep the other ones really nice. And this was one of his favorites. It looks great. He liked the convertible, and who doesn't like the baby blue color, right?
So, Dan, we're standing in front of a 56 Chevy Nomad, and you know I love wagons. I got kids, I know you do too. What was it about this car that was so special to your dad?
It goes back to the mainstream America. I mean, if you were a family man and you needed a vehicle, there's a good chance you were going to buy one of these. But as time went on, these were not cared for quite as much as some of the fancier cars, and before we know it, it ended up being rare. The fact that it's all original and it represents what really the Nomad was, it appealed to him.
Well, and undoubtedly, Bill, this 56 Nomad is going to get a lot of attention at Kissimmee.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen Nomads come through in the kind of activity. And it's funny because this is a late-in-life collectible. For years, people really ignored them. In fact, when these came out new, people didn't buy them because, number one, they were too fancy. We don't need a fancy station wagon, and it's only a two-door station wagon. People wanted four doors for the family. So they didn't build many between 55 and 57. They've used the Nomad name since then a couple of times, but when you say Nomad, this is what people think about.
So, Dan, your dad, Jack, had basically a list of cars in his mind that he really wanted to build this collection around. But cars like this, he really got in before some of the prices just went insane. Another good example of what a visionary he was.
You know, that's funny because my dad just had a knack for knowing when the time was right and when the opportunity was there, and he seized it, and he seized it hard. I'd say that's part of it, and it kind of was in his nature, but he just happened to love cars like this, and he took advantage of the fact that he could do it.
Up until now, we've seen vehicles with a little hustle. Now I've got a little classic muscle here. 1970 Mercury Cougar Eliminator. 1967, the Cougar was a car that was competing with the Mustang, you might say, with a little bit more luxury, a little more of a European flair. But by 1969, they were beginning to get muscular with the Eliminator. This is the 1970. A whole bunch of different engines you could get, 351s, 302s. This one, 428 Super Cobra Jet with 335 horsepower and a 4-speed. I gotta tell ya, this is a favorite with Mercury fans the world over. How did your father acquire this?
You know, we had several of the Mustangs with the 428, so he was pretty familiar with all that. But it goes back to we're trying to capture different manufacturers in different years. And he finds out that there's a Cougar that has a Cobra Jet in it, and he goes, I'm all over it. And so there was no doubt, didn't matter what color this time, he was all in.
Absolutely competition orange, blacked out hood scoop, herringbone interior. As we pointed out, the 428 Super Cobra Jet backed up by the 4-speed transmission. If you know, you know. That's what category you put this car into.
Exactly.
Now we go to a year earlier, 1969, when American Motors finally decided, hey, we need to get into this muscle car thing that's so popular now, and hence the 1968 AMX led to the 1969 AMX, like the one in this collection. This one, a V8 car, the 390, 315 horsepower, with an automatic and air conditioning. So your dad wasn't all about muscle. He liked to cruise and be comfortable, too.
You know, when you tell somebody like my dad, well, AMX wasn't really pumping the horsepower, but they made it lighter and more nimble. And that was solving a problem. And in his world, that was a brilliant solution. And it actually drives really well, believe it or not. It's a great handling car.
And we got to give a shout out to Dick Teague here, of course, the designer of all AMC's most famous models, including the AMX. And it was the only other two-seat American sports car being produced in 1969, aside from the Corvette.
Yeah, and Dick Teague was not like Sam Walton. Dick Teague had no money over at AMC to do all of this designing, so he had to replace money with creativity, and he certainly did that. These cars from AMX look nothing like anything else anybody else was building at the time.
Do you think there was some part of your dad that saw something in AMC that maybe he recognized? You know, he was one of those guys that, you know, when he first started his corporate career at Kroger didn't totally understand all of these changes that he was trying to make. Your dad, very much a visionary, ends up meeting Sam Walton, hired there, and then he really takes the brand to a whole nother level. Was there something about your dad that he really saw in some of these leaders of some of these brands that he really connected with?
Well, with the AMX, it's a perfect example of the smaller corporation trying to keep up with the big guys. And when Walmart started, they were not the big guy. They were doing it on a shoestring with innovative ideas, coming up with solutions that nobody else had. And I think that appealed to him because that's exactly what they did at Walmart.
Yeah.
2 years later, the AMX became a trim level of the Javelin, and a few years after that, we had to say goodbye to both the Javelin and the AMX, but it left a rather interesting legacy behind, and your dad is helping to keep it alive.
I'd like to see the two new owners of the AMX and the Eliminator go head-to-head on the drag strip.
Ooh, match race, 2 out of 3. Here we go.
Now we're talking.
Standing in front of a very cool 1971 442 W30 package, which included the lighter hood, fiberglass, functional intakes, feeding that 455, which by this time, Bill, was only making 350 horsepower.
Yeah, like all the other muscle cars in that time period, we saw those horsepower ratings coming down. But that engine, that was the only hand-built, almost blueprinted engine that you could get from the factory back in those days. This particular car here also is numbers matching, and it's a 4-speed car, which adds to its value as well. Once again, a car that your dad probably loved having in his collection with that performance heritage.
Yeah, you know, obviously my father's no longer with us, and he left a list of cars that we needed to fill in. And in the muscle car barn, we were missing the 442 W30. And it's something that I went and found and acquired to help satisfy that list. And so Dad never really knew we got this car, but in the Shewmaker legacy for the collection, it deserved to be here. Today, we're wanting to offer it up because it goes with everything else we've been willing to offer, and I think it's a good one that needs a good home.
There's so many unique cars in this collection, and one of them caught my eye right over here. This is a 1973 Ford Mustang. Now, this was a Q code, so it had the biggest V8 and 4-barrel at the time. Now, the power was not huge, right? Under 200 horsepower. But what really stands out about this car is not only is it that striking green paint, but it's what I would refer to as like a guacamole green interior. There's only 750 miles on this car.
Our understanding is the dealer had a hard time selling it even in the day. And so it sat on the showroom floor for quite some time before it finally got moved off and put into a collection, but it never really got titled at that time. And what was intriguing to us is it's all original and it's low miles, and we're in 73. Things are changing, and this was a good representation of that.
I understood that it didn't sell until someone walked into the dealership with a bag of chips.
They were like, oh, this is what I've been missing with these chips.
But you mentioned,
guacamole.
Thank you. You mentioned that the performance was down. You said just under 200. It's more around 150, but this car was not about performance. This car was about style, the way it looked when you were cruising around. Because, Bill, as you know, by 1973, man, it had been completely eviscerated as far as performance goes.
Yeah, and this was the last year for the Generation 1 Mustang. Remember, the next year they came up with the Mustang 2, and that's another story for another time. But by the way, we have another green car from the Ford stable that you're not going to make fun of because of the green color. It's this grabber green 1971 Torino with that 429 Cobra Jet big block and 370 horsepower and a 4-speed, built for the quarter mile. Now, the following year, no more 429 Cobra Jet engines in any of those offerings from Ford, so this car really places an important bookmark in muscle car history for Ford.
And rare, too. It's one of only 313 with the 429 Cobra Jet and one of only 50 in that grabber green.
Pretty impressive. I'll still take chips and guacamole. That thing, I'm telling you, it is brand new. To only have 750 unrestored miles in that car, oh, that's gonna make somebody really smile.
And hungry.
You know, it would be hard to miss a car this vibrant. This 69 Nova SS in butternut yellow. Dan, this thing's a beauty, 350 horse car. And this was kind of more readily available for every man, right? This was a fun car.
Yeah, you had to show people what you really could afford and what you could buy. You were going to take this and start tinkering with it and rip the wheels off and put something else and tear into the motor, right, Bill? And
Yeah.
you're gonna make it better. So why not show people what they really remember? And that's this car.
Yep, cars like this kept the speed equipment companies in business, I'll tell you, because everything you see on this car probably would have a hot rodder remove it and put something else on there that, at least in their mind, looked a little bit better. This one, by the way, is the big block, 396, and this was the, well, you know, the last year that it was a Chevy 2 Nova, it would become just a Nova, and they had a bigger engine than this one in it, the 375 horsepower L78. So even from the factory, these cars were already pretty hot.
Really cool looking with the dog dishes, as you mentioned, the butternut yellow, the bucket seats, 4-speed transmission, red line tires. This has got a lot going for it.
And what makes it unique is its numbers matching. So somebody didn't tear into it, it's all original.
So much variety in this Shewmaker collection. It's unbelievable.
Guys, I'm about to say a series of words that's gonna make all Mopar fans very happy. 1963 Dodge Polara, black in color, convertible, powered by a 426 Max Wedge. I mean, come on, does it get any better than that, Rut?
This is pretty amazing. And I gotta be honest, I've seen a lot of these that get really hacked up. This thing is in incredible shape.
You know, a lot of the cars we went after specifically to fill a void in the collection. This car came available and just presented itself to us. And when it did, you find out how rare it is and how unique it is and how special it is. We couldn't let it go. In the overall collection and the legacy of Jack Shewmaker, it's still kind of an outlier. And I think it deserves to find a home where it really gets appreciated for what it is and doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Anybody who appreciates vintage drag racing is going to love this car right here. Back in 1963 with that cross-ram Max Wedge engine, you saw a lot of those at the drag strip, and this has the push-button torque flight automatic. What the drag racers used to do in the day is they'd come to the starting line, put it in neutral, rev the engine, and then hot switch the drive button and launch the car. And just to watch somebody do that was worth the price of admission. Dan, we want to thank you for sharing not only your cars with us, but some of the stories behind them. What would you like to say to people who have seen this collection, might be interested in buying a vehicle when they come to Kissimmee in January?
Well, Bill, the Shewmaker Collection, in honor of my father, Jack Shewmaker, is alive and well. And we've got an opportunity here for people to own a part of that legacy and take pride in saying that they got a vehicle from our collection. And we're excited to offer that.
I've got dibs on the Polara, and I think the Guacamole Mobile may be going home.
Yeah, I don't know if we can call dibs, but if we can, I'll bring the chips.
Well, we've only shown you just a small smattering of the Shewmaker collection. We've got a Nissan GTR that's coming, a Hennessy-tuned Dodge Viper. We've got some new generation Shelby Mustangs, and even a classic generation Shelby Mustang coming down to Kissimmee in January. If you can't join us, please watch us live on ESPN+. For more information, go to mecum.com. And one more thing, all the vehicles will be selling at no reserve.